Robert Jenrick, took a stroll through Birmingham, and apparently the first thing he did was start counting skin tones. He told the press that in 90 minutes in Handsworth, I didn't see another white face, and that he said proved Britain has a problem with integration. Let's have a listen, shall we?
I went to Handsworth in Birmingham the other day to do a video on litter, and it was absolutely appalling. It's as close as I've come to a slum in this country. But the other thing that I noticed there was that it was one of the worst integrated places that I've ever been to. In fact, in the hour and a half that I was filming with news there, I didn't see another white face. And that's not the kind of country I want to live in. I want to live in a country where people are properly integrated. It's not about the colour of your skin or your faith. Of course it isn't. But I want people to be living alongside each other, not parallel lives. That's not the right way we want to live as a country.
It feels like the only person who's not integrating is Jenrick. He's literally using the absence of white faces as a barometer for national decline. I don't know if that's a measurable thing or if that's even something that we can depend on. And then came Kemi. Kemi entered our screens. Who could have condemned it, but decided not to?
It is a whole load of different communities. Pakistani, Indian, Bangladeshi, Afro-Caribbean, mixed race, white. They are all living together. It just happens that quite a lot of them have brown skins.
Well, yes, as do I. So I'm saying this very...
So what's the problem?
The problem is more about Birmingham as a whole. We've seen the election of sectarian MPs there.
Yes, no, but I'm specifically asking about the Handsworth one, because he was just saying he walked into that community and he was unnerved, he was discomforted by something.
He will have explained what it was he saw, and I don't want us to focus too much on those comments because they're out of context. We didn't hear the full conversation.
Well, hang on, he said he doesn't resolve from the comments at all.
Yes, but that wasn't... He didn't just stand up and make those two statements.
No, but he's put them in context this morning in interviews, and he's comfortable with starting this debate. But it sounds to me, may I just make one point? It sounds to me a bit as though it's out of kilter with what you were saying on Sunday. I listened to your speech. You said, I am British, it's got nothing to do with the colour of my skin.
Correct.
He's there saying, actually, I find it a bit unnerving seeing all these people with the same skin colour.
No, I don't think that's what he was saying. I think what he was saying was about integration. We haven't heard the entire conversation. Those are two sentences, and what I'm saying is...
But there's lots of different communities that are integrated.
Gary, if I may, what I'm saying is that we need to make sure that the people in our country want to be here, are contributing here, and are having shared values. Birmingham has a problem. You look at who's been elected there. Sectarian MPs campaigning for airports.
Yes, you're talking about that, and I'm talking about what he said, and I'm trying to bring it back to...
But the point I'm making is that it's all related. It is not a separate point. That's where we disagree. It is not a separate point. He may have used a phrase which, out of context, does not explain that point well. I'm the leader of the party. I gave a speech about this. I am making the point. It doesn't matter what the colour of your skin is, but we do need to have shared British values.
Makes zero sense. Kemi, I do not understand you. I get more confused the more she comes on screen, the more she opens her mouth. I'm just like, who are you? And what are your values? Instead, she's saying Jenrick was just making an observation. She called it a factual statement. Apparently, it's perfectly fine to measure a community's worth by its whiteness, as long as you say you're being factual about it. In other words, counting brown or white faces isn't a policy. Integration is more complex than that. Yet, in practically the same breath, she defended Jenrick's choice of words as a factual description. Wild. What a weird one, Kemi. An odd and curious balancing act. She says judging by appearance is not the point, but also that Jenrick did nothing wrong by literally doing just that. You do the maths there. Well, let's think. Why the eagerness to defend Jenrick's controversial remarks? Well, look no further than the Conservative Party's right-wing rival, Reform. At the very same Tory conference where Jenrick's comments stirred outrage, Nigel Farage's Reform was making headlines by poaching Tory members and councillors en masse. In fact, on the conference's third day, around 18 to 20 Conservative councillors defected to Reform in one go, a humiliating blow to Kemi's party. Farage crowd the Conservative Party is dead as an effective opposition, welcoming defectors to their quote-unquote natural home with Reform. And ironically, this is following a YouGov poll that found half of Tory members think that Kemi should not lead the party into the next election. So it makes it quite interesting. I think that it's against this backdrop that Kemi's scrambling to fortify her right flank. She follows all of this by painting Reform as not truly right wing at all. In a series of interviews, she argued that Farage's party is basically posing as hardline conservatives whilst pushing big government spending. She says Reform wants to increase welfare, Reform wants nationalisation. Those are not quote unquote conservative policies. The Tory leader even shrugged off the swarm of defections as a kind of cleansing. Losing turncoats to Reform, that's just shedding a lot of the baggage over the last 14 years. Pretty bold spin, effectively calling defectors fair weather Tories who weren't committed to true conservatism anyway. But it underscores how Kemi is drawing an ideological line in the sand. Her Conservatives will be the real party of the right, whilst Reform are cast as pretenders who want to spend more, tax more, and borrow more. So the question is, who wins when the so-called centre-right becomes indistinguishable from the far right, or supposedly far right, it claims to fear? Because in this context of contest, the only thing moving faster than Jenricks' mouth is the Overton window. Kemi's argument essentially says, we're the true party of the right, not these populist imposters who want nationalisation, etc. Are the Tories trying to out-reform, or are they just collapsing into them?
Well, a little bit of both, in all honesty. The really galling aspect of all of this, I think, as a lifelong Brummie and a very proud person civically, is that my city is being used as a political football. They're trying to stir a racial divide in my city. In the case of Robert Jenrick, to basically unofficially start his leadership campaign, because Kemi can be gone in a month's time, and he's probably going to trigger that at some point in the future, I imagine. And Kemi is backing him up because she doesn't want him to be able to do so. She wants to essentially try and remain the leader of the party, even if it's nominal for the time being. It's genuinely pathetic. And in terms of the overall thing, I'm disgusted by Robert Jenrick's comments, not just because they're clearly racist, right? Because what has the colour of the skin of a person got to do with integration? Are these people less British based on the colour of their skin? Because, for instance, if he'd bumped into one of the Ukrainian refugees who had moved to Britain in the recent past, he would see a white person and instantly think that they were somehow more British than the black guy whose grandparents were born here and parents were born here and he was born here somehow. Like he says in the thing, it's not about your colour of skin. Well, why did you mention it then, mate? What was the relevance of it exactly? Why did you bring that up as if that was something that was relevant? And also, it's particularly galling to hear this man come up from London, this member of the private school mafia, doing his weird, sneering, racist, poverty safari hunt nonsense. He says in the thing, I was here for an hour and a half. Well, maybe if you spent any more than an hour and a half in the entire city, you might learn something about the place if you gave a shit about us. And you clearly don't. And that's sort of the problem that the Tories have always had in cities like mine, is that they don't care. They don't want to care. They don't want to know about the place. They just want to use it as a political football. Genuinely disgusting. The temerity of this piece of garbage to suggest that Handsworth is a slum. Now, Handsworth is a part of the city that I know very well. My grandma used to live on the Lozelles Road, literally right there in the place. I grew up playing football and cricket with black kids and brown kids and all kinds of different people in Handsworth Park on the weekends, right? It was an amazing place. I've got a lot of fun memories of the place, and I've still got family there. I go there pretty regularly. And there's no doubt that, statistically speaking, he is correct that the majority of people who live there are not white. It's about 10% white people live in the area. According to the last census, right? It is possible for him to have spent an hour and a half there and not seen a white face, but it's how you approach that fact. I, growing up, was fascinated by seeing people with turbans and rastas and white people and people from India and Bangladesh and all over the world. It was a genuine melting pot. I loved it. For me, it was a fantastic experience. I found it a genuinely enriching thing to be around these various types of people rather than a boring, homogenous lump, which by no means is Handsworth that. Handsworth is many things, mostly non-white, but it is not one group of people. It is not a ghetto. There are people from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, all kinds of parts of the Caribbean, parts of Africa now. And we've seen immigrants from the likes of Ukraine and Poland and various parts of Eastern Europe as well now moving in there. It is a genuine melting pot. When he says integration, he just means white. Being a racist, he is chasing the votes of fascists. Be under no illusion on this one, okay? And in terms of it being a slum, right? It is undeniably an economically underserved area. It is a very poor part of the city. And we need to look at precisely why that might be, right? It's the policies put forward by the likes of Robert Jenrick over the last 14 years. It's the massive austerity that the Tories have enforced. It's the huge slashing of council budgets, which means that the upkeep of the area is basically nil. It means now that the council can't even pick up the bloody bins, for Christ's sake. We've got a rat problem everywhere. You've got the shutting down of local youth centres, the shutting down of Sure Start centres, the shutting down of libraries, the shutting down of post offices. Literally everything that can make a community, the Tories have destroyed, up to and including the traditional industries which allowed the economic upward mobility of previous migrant communities in those areas. Because the thing that you're not being told is that this isn't an area that black people just went to. It's the poor part of the city where migrants have always gone to. If you go to places like Handsworth, Lozells, Newtown, Alum Rock, these used to be very heavily Irish areas because the Irish came over in the late 19th, early 20th century. Then it became a more black area as people came in from the Caribbean. Then you had people from the Indian subcontinent coming in here. It's the place that people can afford to live. No one's ghettoizing for the sake of it. But as with previous generations, they had good trade union jobs that they could rely on, and that allowed an economic upward mobility, which meant they didn't end up lingering in these areas. And that has been destroyed by Robert Jenrick and Robert Jenrick's political forebears. He is the reason that they are poor, and yet he tries to exploit that for racist ends, and he can go fuck himself.
He can go fuck himself. Big facts. Oh, you're so fucking right, though. He can actually go fuck himself. Like, Robert fucking Generic, you fucking prick. He's such a prick. Like, and I really, really, really cannot stand. Sorry, it's just told me I hit my step gun. I don't know how that's happened. But I really, really cannot stand. You're so right. The Tories, particularly, or just people in politics, using socially deprived places or relatively socially deprived places for their political football to score political points. What have you done for that city? What have you done for that town? You have utterly stripped it from the things that actually make it a city that, or a town that thrives in the way that it rightfully should. And I fucking hate them constantly, repeatedly slamming Birmingham City Council. They accuse it of mismanagement, the insolvency and the failure, but they don't see all of the things that have contributed to that. And you're so right. They have had a massive hand in doing that. And I don't want Birmingham to be used as this visual and symbolic backdrop in cultural narratives, like the dirt in the street, the rubbish, the social disorder, like quote unquote urban decay, when they are the ones that have strolled into that city and have made the things, have made the situation like that.
He doesn't care. He spent an hour and a half here, and he decided because there's some economic deprivation caused by his policies, and seemingly he didn't see a white person, that all of a sudden he knows everything. He's an expert on the city and can use words like slum. You are fighting to try and become the prime minister of this country. You have some fucking respect, you piece of shit, right? Don't turn up in a city like you give a fuck about it, you little fucking Uxbridge wank. It disgusts me. The people of this city have to put up with so much shit from national government. These just out of touch, like private school Westminster twats turning up and lecturing us like they know the first fucking thing about living in this city. And notice that he went specifically to the area that everyone already knew was largely non-white. Because, like I say, when I was growing up there, in the early mid-90s, I knew that there were very few white people there. This is not a surprise. This is not a new thing that's been sprung upon people. Everyone already knew this. And he went there specifically for that purpose. He didn't, for instance, go to, I don't know, Harborne or Edgbaston, which are the white enclaves of the city, which, by the way, you are far more likely to receive a harsh and, let's say, unfair reaction if you are a non-white person walking through those streets, because trust me, the police will be called on you, undoubtedly, because they all, do the funny handshake in the club with the chief of the police and all the rest of it, right?
Mm.
Than if you're a white person walking through the street of Allen Rock. I guarantee you, any day of the week, the white people in this city are less integrated in many respects than the black people. I assure you of that, okay? I know as a person, even as a white person who doesn't necessarily dress very poshly or talk very poshly, the white people in those enclaves, in the places like Harborne or at the top end of Moseley in the posh area, these people are basically not Brummies for all intents and purposes. They've walled themselves off in their own little rich people area. They are the ones who are not integrating. Trust me, I have far more in common with the grandson of a Jamaican bus driver or whatever than I ever do with Lord Farquhar's son, who lives in Moseley. I guarantee you, any day. And Robert Jenrick would know that if he gave a shit about the city and came here and learned anything, instead of just coming here and, like I say, doing racist poverty safari for the benefit of, clicks on the internet.
Yeah, and like the mythologizing of Birmingham kind of erases the complexity of that city and the things that have gone into that city. Like, and you rightfully said it, the infrastructure decay that's as a result of deliberate political choices that the Tories have decided to do, and the funding cuts and the decades of disinvestment and systemic inequalities. Like, you won't ever see that side of the story because they refuse to show that side of the story.
Well, exactly. It's kind of a cycle. It's partly racism and partly economics, and partly the kind of combination of those two things. Racism that people of colour face in terms of the fact that we know that it's harder for them to rent in areas that are more affluent because they receive, on average, I think it's like a 36% less positive feedback rate from people who are largely white, who are landlords, who are people who are renting. So black people and brown people find it much more difficult to access those kind of areas. They find it less easy to go to those kind of areas in the first place because, of course, they're poorer, because the lower paid jobs that used to exist that you could use as a sort of stable basis to build up kind of generational wealth and mobility are gone now. And so people find themselves in a generational loop of just being stuck in this same place. And even if Robert Jenrick or anyone else cared to do a genuine kind of like, let's make sure everywhere has this percentage of white people and this percentage of black people and this percentage of whatever, as a way of trying to integrate whatever integration even means in these people's words, you couldn't do that anyway because of another Tory policy, which is the absolute hollowing out of the council housing stock.
Yeah.
So the council couldn't implement that kind of policy because we don't have any fucking houses.
Make it make sense. Or the houses are there, they're just inaccessible to the working people, to people that actually deserve homes because they do work fucking hard. And that kind of like comes in quite nicely to my second question. Like the line, and I want to talk about identity politics. Like the line from the right is that you don't see colour, and it's not about colour, but that the individual person is what matters. Often the critique from the right towards the left is that the left often boxes people into categories. Like, you're black, how can you have this opinion? A right wing black person, you shouldn't be saying this, blah blah blah. Yet I think the right are falling under their own weight of contradictions. They are obsessed with identity politics, and something they accuse the left of doing, and now Jenrick is judging Birmingham by the lack of white faces. Make it make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, we all know that every accusation with the right is a confession. Every time they try and throw something at us, it's always because they're trying to hide their own version of that thing. We've seen, obviously, from Zionists, the fact that they genuinely seem to think that all Jewish people should have one opinion about the state of Israel, and anyone who dissents from that is treated more anti-Semitically than often a Nazi will treat a Jew. You have Robert Jenrick with his, literally in the same breath of saying, I didn't see any white faces, as if that was a bad thing, and then saying, but it's not about your race or your colour or whatever. Well, why did you mention that then?
Exactly.
If it wasn't about that, why did you bother to mention that fact? Because, like, if I walk around an area and I don't see white people, I don't even really think about it. It doesn't register in my head because I don't care. I couldn't give two shits whether the person is white or black or brown or whatever. It doesn't bother me. I just walk along the street and I treat people as I want to be treated until they show me otherwise, right? That's the way you should act as a normal human being, rather than thinking, oh, there are no white people, I'm scared. Well, maybe if you lived in anywhere other than just a white area, I presume. Like, I presume he doesn't walk around Belgravia in London and think, well, I don't see any brown people around here at all. This is the most outrageous lack of integration I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Level the place. No. because it's rich people. Rich white people who went to private school who all think exactly the same, that kind of homogeneity is just fine in Robert Jenricks' eyes.
Yeah.